How did you meet?
Him?
Somebody had tried to set us up with a blind date, and I'd seen her picture because she ran for some office for the freshman class, secretary or something like that for it. Then it came time for this blind date. Of course, I didn't have a car. So I don't know what I had in mind, but double date or something, I would imagine. I wasn't big on the books, but I passed. I got by. I made enough to get a BA degree in business, and I called her up the day of the date and said I had so much homework I didn't know whether I was going to be able to make it. She said, "I'm so glad you called because I'm just snowed under. I can't. There's no way I'm going to be able to go on this date." So we both backed out, and that was the end of that until that spring we went spring break. Well, she went down with her sorority girls, and then us, 3 or 4 or 5 of us, decided we'd go to Daytona for spring break where the girls were going. So we loaded up and pooled our money to get enough gas to go down there, buy some beer and have enough to eat on while you're down there. And somebody with her room and everybody else would bunk on the floor. So we're down there, and I guess we'd been out all night. I don't know why. I didn't have enough money to drink a lot, but drink beer here and go to that place and drink something, go there. And we'd kind of been up trashing around the whole scenery, the scene on Daytona Beach. And it's already dawn, and for somehow or another we wound up back at this motel. My roommate and I walked out to the beach, go out to the water. And of course, it was zombies by then. There was this blanket laying there with a sailor hat, turned the wrong side out like you wear them. And there was nobody around, so I just plopped down on that thing, put that hat over my head, over my eyes, and went instantly to sleep. Next thing I knew, this girl I was on her blanket.
Well, I came out of the water and he's just laying on my towel, on my blanket.
And I apologized, and of course, I recognized her, and then once I told her who I was, she knew who I was and everything. I said, "I'm sorry, we're just so tired." She said, "Go, don't mind. I got a good night's sleep. I'm fine. I'm okay."
That was the beginning of forever, I guess, because he kind of was with me all day, and I had a date that night, but
I said, "You got a date? Do you have a date tonight?" She said, "Yeah, I got a date." I said, "Well, do you have a late date?" I don't even know if they had such a thing then. She said, "No." I said, "Okay, when you get off your date, I'll pick you up and we will go on a late date." So I found out where she was going on her date, and they were going to a place called the Teepee.
He showed up, so we danced.
So I got there, and then I bird dogged her all night long. I danced with every dance, and
that made the guy mad.
So when it got through, we left, and I went back, waiting for her kind of at the motel, and he brought her back. His car had a convertible. You could drive all over that beach. It was packed sand. He came and literally dropped her off.
He dropped me in the water because he had a convertible. So he just picked me up and just dropped me. I mean, I didn't get all wet, but my feet did. But he was mad.
He was mad because I danced with her. He had a date with her, and he didn't even get to speak to her.
From then on, he was very present. Very much around. So, yeah.
I knew what I wanted. And my daddy told me, if you want it, go get it. It's kind of a very short story after that. I never dated anybody else. She did either. I guess this was spring of my junior year, so we dated the rest of that year, and then my senior year, we never dated anybody else. And I didn't have enough money until I left college. I bought a ring.
It took a long time, but anyway, a few years later.
And that was how we got engaged. While she was working with Delta Airlines as a stewardess, and I was waiting to go in the Air Force. And my coach at college, a scout from the Green Bay Packers, had honed in on me, and they were just bound and determined I was going to go play football for the Green Bay Packers. I didn't want to have anything else to do with football. I was done with it. I started as a junior in high school, had 4 years of college, and that was good enough for me. I wanted to get on with my life, because back then a pro football player made $6,000 a year, and that was top money. And you get your bones broken, your shoulders separated, your teeth knocked out because the equipment was lousy. So I didn't want to do it, but they said, oh, you got to do it, and you got to do it anyway. And they promised me a postseason bonus if I get that. That means you get to pay the whole year, and if you don't get killed or kicked off, they'll give you $1,000 at the end of the season, plus your whatever your contract was anyway. So I went there for a year to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I guess I was there a couple of months. Made it through there, several cuts and all this stuff, and my heart wasn't in it. My girl was back in there, and I put my Air Force career on hold, and they could only do it for 1 year, so I'm looking at 1 year of playing professional football at best, with a chance of getting hurt and not being able to fly. So it was just a stupid thing, and I didn't want to do it, and I got pressured into it anyway. But anyway, I went in and talked to the coach and told him I was heading out. And this was when Lyle Blackman was the head coach at Green Bay. It was before Lombardi got there, within a year or two of him coming. So anyway, they gave me my travel money, and I went home, and I continued to work for Bob Nick's nursery, which I'd worked all through high school. And that's how I bought a ring.
Now it's 63 years, right?
63.
Yeah.
So I still like her cooking. So I went to work as a teacher. I was a coach, but you had to be hired. You had to be a member of the teachers union. So I went from making a little bit of money to making a little less money. So when I bought your mother's ring, and I'd already bought that car, because when I was on the way to Green Bay, my car dropped the rear end out of it, and I was in Jackson, Georgia. Just happened to be the person that owned the Ford dealership in Jackson. I knew him quite well because a friend of mine dated his daughter at school, Dwight Horton. You might know him, Harriet Horton. So Sunday morning, about 10 o'clock, I walked from a mile out of town when my car was sitting back to his house, and knocked on the door, and he came to the door, and I explained my plight to him. And so we got in his car and went over to the Ford dealership and signed me up for 1957 Ford Fairlane 500, fully loaded, radio and heater. I mean, black and white, looked like a damn police car. I went to Green Bay in that car rather than my old Lizard. So when I got into this working for Bob Nick, I was making payments, car payment, ring payment, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, living with my aunt in Albany. And I was thinking I was making about $250 a month. And my payments were $230 because I lived free with her, but I worked 25 miles from where I lived. And I was going further in debt just by breathing, standing there. So anyway, I knew somebody in the Air Force that calls you in. So I got him to move me up to where I could go in January rather than waiting until the middle of the summer. I went in just before Christmas. I think that's when I gave her the ring, when she came out to see me there on one of her overnights or flights she got into San Antonio. Got married while I was in basic training down in Bainbridge, Georgia. I never have understood it all these years later. Your flight training is basic and primary. Those things mean the same thing. But then again, knowing the government, that makes perfect sense. So I went to basic, then to primary. By then we were married and we went to Enid, Oklahoma for T-33 training. T-34 prop jobs in Bainbridge. And you go there and then you go to jets in T-33, which is a two-place trainer, and that's where you get your wings. When you finish that, you're, quote, a pilot. And from there you select which avenue you take. And two of us, out of a class of about 35, picked fighters. The rest of them went every which way, and ATC, search and rescue, all that kind of stuff. I chose the F-100 fighters, went to Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. Anyway, we made it through there and we had our first dog, the General, a German Shepherd. Anyway, from there, we went to Spangdahlem, Germany as a new mission-ready crew member in the F-100, fully qualified to sit Victor alert on a nuclear weapon, 1 megaton bomb, targeted against the East German target. 12 there and 12 here, 12 Wiesbaden coming all the way from England. We saturate that part of Germany with nuclear weapons, if it had ever come to that. It just, thank God, it had better sense in those days than they have now about what to do in the military. But anyway, while I was there, we transitioned into the F-105, which was my baby. I love it like it was a child. Not quite. It's not in my will. But that was my favorite of all the things I flew. And it was a supersonic 2.5 times the speed of sound. It weighed 50,000 pounds fully loaded. This is a fighter plane. This wasn't a B-17 or a B-29. It carried the same load that a B-29 carried, as far as bombs are concerned. 8 750-pound bombs external. So I checked out in that. Tony was born in Atlanta.
That's right.
So we moved out there with him as a baby and then went from there to Germany. He was just a toddler then when I got reassigned to Spangdahlem out of 100s. So I was going, while she was home at your grandmother's house, getting ready to have the baby, I went through Nellis Air Force Base Advanced Gunnery, went through survival school at Stead, which is in just north of Reno, Nevada. And then when I came out of there, got all that done, then we went to Germany. So it was a lot of stories went back and forth. But this one time, we were going out of Brooklyn and we just stopped for some reason in Bermuda and got all the stuff in, got ready to go from there on to the next stop, which would be some refueling. And sometimes we go all the way without stopping. And I've got several of those. And sometimes we do like this, Bermuda, the Azores, and then Spangdahlem. This one time we got to Bermuda, spent the night, and we were getting ready to come out of there, and our takeoff time was like 2 o'clock in the morning, because we're going to be flying into the sun. We're going to be flying into daylight. So we get out to the end of the runway, 4 of us, and it's black as the inside of a black cat's ass. It was dark. So we took off, we're going, go take off toward the United States. Hard turn back toward Europe. So anyway, I was number 4. Number 1 goes, and it light the burner. It's like a searchlight coming on in your eyes. And remember, it's dark as hell out there. You just went from just cockpit lights to this searchlight in your eyes. And 2 goes, and then 3 goes, and I'm the last one. And I go, and we're fully loaded with 3 external tanks, 2 450 gallons and 1 650 gallon, plus all the internal fuel to make these legs. across the ocean. So lift up my gear, and immediately it's flying into an ink well. Well, then I pick up the afterburner, I thought, or he'd come out of afterburner, and I could see his position lights blinking. So, okay, that's great. I got him in sight. And I kept wondering why he doesn't turn. And you should have already turned by now. Well, in the meantime, I'm getting further and further and further this way. I asked somebody, they asked departure control, somebody said, "And where's my flight?" He said, "Over yonder." I said, "Right, so and so and so." And evidently what I had done, it's a civilian airport, it had the seaplanes on it, and something evidently, I can't imagine why it would be in the same time, but something took off that had lights, and that's what I saw. But anyway, I finally get oriented and get certain, and I called him and said, "How far behind are we?" He said, 85 miles. You damn sure you, and we all they're going 350 to 380 miles, speed. He said, "Now you can't go across the ocean by yourself. You got to be with somebody. Do you have them in sight?" I said, "Tally ho!" And of course, at 50 miles ahead of it, 60. I said, "I got them, tally ho." I said, "Okay, we're releasing you." So here I am in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean by myself. Nobody. So anyway, I pressed on, press on, press on. And we meet a tanker. You got to go so far, and then you have to top off. Whether you either have to go back and land, or you got to top off. If you can't take gas, you got to go back. And if you can take gas, you got a full load, you go to the next step. And that's the way they've always done it. So anyway, we're going on. It's getting thunderstorms, lightning. I'm sitting out there by my little old scrawny ass self. And leader comes up and calls the tanker. This was after we'd been gone an hour or more, headed toward Europe. And he said, well, they've had to change their route. They usually know exactly where refueling point is, or movement, and they set up a racetrack like this, and you go till you find them. They just keep doing that big racetrack, figuring until the flight gets there, and then they do whatever they do. They usually will refuel you 1, 2, 3, 4 en route to your next destination, and drop the last one off even closer than it came in. That's the concept. So we're coming in there, and we've dropped down to about 18,000 feet from 25 or 30 because of the thunderstorms. And he's jiggling around all over the place trying to find a clear spot for us to refuel in. The tanker was. So anyway, we come my flight had already gone by him because he had changed where he was supposed to be. So I'm the first one to get there. So I'm going to get this, you put your radio on something and they can transmit, and you get a needle that tells you sort of where they are. And so I come in there and I look, they get on all their outside lights and, blinkers and everything. And I get there first. So he said, the others are still trying to find him, turning around, coming back to get to him. And so I jumped on and got all my gas, filled up to the last brim. That was just an exciting time for me, and a hell of a lot more exciting than a combat mission. I mean, it was tough to think about it. I mean, you knew what you was doing on a combat mission. This thing, I didn't know where the hell I was at any time.